Welcome to Constant V, a live podcast of a writer's life. This is episode 2, Peeling for Indigo, and I'm your host, Vince Capps. Recording my personal journey of being a writer while writing a novel. That song was As Colorful as Ever from the album Layers. The band is broke for free. For those tuning in for the first time, Constant V stands for Constant Vicissitude, vicissitude meaning change, and this podcast is to help myself and others evolve creatively. In episode 1, called Tidbits, I discussed the definitions of writing, including it being a form of meditation, describing it as having the ability to peel the layers of the subconscious like meditation does. And I like to think of these layers as being pages or chapters of an anthology. Because when you're looking at an anthology, you sometimes like to jump around. Not physically, well, maybe. Really depends, right? But it really depends on your mood and your motive. And often the times of the day. So how do you begin? Do you like reading? Do you often wonder when the best time to write and the best time to read? Most people would argue that it's at the end or the opening of the day. And I like to think of it as when the night turns or is close to turning the color indigo. And yes, I did read that. Because it's then when we have insight into and completely outside the big picture. Right? Whether it's at the end of the day, we can recapitulate what happened, or if it's the beginning of the day, maybe we're thinking we can define it all now, right? There is nothing but yourself to define that moment. So as cheesy as it is, most of us creatives await and peel for indigo. And we attribute this time to mood. Sometimes we attribute it to the metaphysical, like explaining it's your third eye or your sixth chakra being most fluent. But science has an explanation too, would you gather? And in particularly, throughout my research, I want to discuss an article that I found on a site called bufferapp.com. It's a social blogging site. And though it's a blog, this guy, Kevin Lee, who wrote this article 2 years ago, it's called The Best Time to Write and Get Ideas According to Science. It's really an amazing article. The title, it sounds pretty boring, right? Pretty bland. But in it provides all these links to research, and it shows MRIs of images, which suggest that guess what time? The morning is the best time to write. And he explains, or research explains, that all our hormonal allotments and bodily rhythms, all of this, along with the prefrontal cortex of our brain being most active in the morning, really attributes to a good time for writing. Really didn't know what the prefrontal cortex was. I mean, prefrontal, you would think it's at the front, but I did check on wisegeek.com, and yes, indeed, it's at the forefront of your head, and it's the central area for controlling emotions and impulses and inhibiting inappropriate behavior. It delays all of your gratifications, all of your needs at a time that's most fitting, right? So it's central to our mental balance. And studies have confirmed that brain circuits are most creatively proactive during and immediately after sleep. And then the editing and proofreading parts of our brain are more active as the day goes on. So, write drunk, edit sober. the MRI scans, they're all labeled in the morning, evening, and then there's one in particular that says evening minus morning, which I'm guessing means the afternoon. I'll post the link on the website, which is constantv.com, by the way, and it recently had a revamp, which I did at 2 a.m. So I think it's a pretty nice site. I think that the Indigo did very well for me. But anyway, the creativity that we have is a function of these connections between many different networks in our brain. That makes sense because if you think about your dreams, the figments that sometimes come out of nowhere, the figments that we're unfamiliar with, they're sometimes only temporarily unfamiliar, right? And that's because these connections in our brain were initially non-existent. But chemically and electrically and hormonally, these came together for the first time, and they create these new images. So we have so many stories within us, so many anthologies, right? In this article, it somewhat redefined who I think I am and what my job might be as a writer. Being a fiction writer especially, I really feel that fiction writers are dreamweavers for themselves and others, because their stories, they're designed to connect ideas and concepts that nobody thought to connect in a way to make sense. It all explains why our ears feel imploded when we awake, right? I mean, why the smallest sounds seem louder. I mean, these connections just are non-existent. And besides that, naturally, we know that when we're groggiest, we're more open-minded. But yeah, these bangs just come out of nowhere because our focus, it seems to be enhanced into just a few areas. And that's just because the daily tasks that we have had have yet to zap our willpower again. And as the day really gets started, the connections, they're moving ship with their flags up. And we're now drivers of the chariots. There's less room for creativity in the captain's seat of the ego and the superego. So now we know when to peel, when to find our indigo, our light at night. That light giving us ways to sometimes see other light, sparks of crackling fire or lightning, or perhaps the pulse in stars as they aglow. Perhaps it comes in a rush like a meteor shower that we can then relax to observe. Or perhaps like me this week while I was thinking about this article. While I was trying to stay awake at night, searching for an answer like searching for constellations. I hope that you move forward with me and continue to search and continue to find your indigo. Next Sunday, I'll be continuing this discussion. Sunday every week, 8 p.m., where we will further observe the electrochemical, and mind sides of ourselves. Until then, be at your best creative. And try to wake up. Try to wake up. Thanks for listening. Here's a song from Kai Engel from his album Deathless, The Renaissance. It's actually a very relaxing song called Morning Placidity, despite the name of the album. Get some rest. Go to bed. Wake up early. See you next time. But I'll be thinking about you at 3:45. Have a good night.